Looks like we're live. Hello.
Awesome.
Welcome, everybody. This being the 369th episode of the Concealed Carry Podcast.
It's amazing.
Before long, it'll be 400. I had a realization the other day, Matthew. I realized we recorded episode 365, and we probably should have given away a P365 or something.
That would have been cool for sure.
The problem is we did episode 300. Now, episode 300 is special because it's 300. It's a nice round even number. And there's other things that are significant with 300, like if you score a 300 in bowling, for instance, a perfect score.
Yes.
300 is a significant number. So we gave away a 300 blackout rifle. I think we gave away a complete up. We worked together with, or was it just the upper?
I think it was a upper.
Well, we worked together with PSA, Palmetto State Armory, to do that. And you do something like that once, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, well, this episode is 308. You should give away a 308. The problem is there's a gazillion number of options out there of calibers and guns and things, and then everybody starts expecting you to just give away guns all the time. What do you think? I'm made of money?
Yeah.
And as much as I'd like to say that all these companies would totally just be like in on on that, like, yeah, we'll send you a gun. Like,
doesn't happen.
People are like, you guys are concealedcarry.com. Like, anybody will give you anything. No.
Yeah, I wish.
So we did not give away a P365 in the 365th episode, and we will not be. I apologize. Maybe someday we'll give away a 365 or something else, but just not today or next week.
Yeah, don't hold your breath, guys.
Wednesday surprise episodes. Well, yeah, surprise in that it is Wednesday instead of Tuesday, and but I did tell people in the shop talk on Monday. I said, guys, crazy stuff going on with the schedule this week, and then next week's Thanksgiving, which also further kind of messes things up. So yeah, just bear with us and stay tuned. And when we go live, and when we don't, we don't. Riley needs a raise. Amen.
Oh, man.
The business needs a raise. I'll say that. If the business does awesome, then Riley will do awesome. And Jacob will do awesome. And Matthew will do awesome. So, yeah, go to our website and buy crap, people.
You guys are great, though. Everybody who supports us is awesome. Totally awesome.
For episode 365, giveaway 365 guns. Oh, man.
And then specify what kind of guns. Squirt guns or something.
Now, if we actually manufactured guns, yeah. On the one hand, there's definitely that part of me that's like, that would be cool. Like, I would think that's awesome. But ain't happening. And I don't necessarily want to do anything that involves the ATF and a lot more governmental oversight. That does not sound like fun.
Yeah.
Guys, today, thanks for joining. Today is a podcast episode, and our topic today is myth or fact. Revolvers are more reliable than semi-autos? We're going to talk about that. I'm looking forward to it, actually. Oh, and by the way, I see a comment here on YouTube from Jacob. There will be a gun giveaway as part of the Black Friday sale. So, guys, we have Black Friday coming up next week. In fact, our Black Friday sale launches. Does it launch? I think it launches at midnight on Thanksgiving night and then midnight. That's when it starts, I believe. I don't know. Check with Jacob. In fact. Let's see. Is the link here live and updated? I'm going to see. I don't know if it is. I don't think it is. Yeah, it's still last year's. But maybe Jacob will tell us here in the comments because he's a little bit more up. I'm not really working on the Black Friday sale project. All right. Believe it or not, we have people that work for us, and people get assigned to projects. And I'll get pulled in when Jacob needs my input. So right now, I should know all the details, but I don't know everything. So we are giving away a gun. And I see a comment here from Home Range who says he wishes Black Friday wasn't just for GN members. So this year is actually a little bit different. This year we are doing a Black Friday sale that is not just for GN members. It is open to everybody. But there are some things that are available to GN members only, and of course GN members are going to save more. So because they get 10% off of everything we sell, period, all the time. So that's happy news for you, Home Range, though, because you'll be able to participate in the Black Friday sale. All right, and hope that you will, and you may even have a chance to win a gun. That's pretty cool. All right, but as Mark says, it is and he's on Facebook here. It's so interesting since we have comments now from both YouTube and Facebook. We actually have to differentiate sometimes because some of you, I might say something and people are watching on one, channel versus the other, and they will have no idea what I'm talking about. But the easy answer, as Mark says on Facebook, is to become a GM member. And I know that Home Range says that it's not really in the cards, affordability wise, but that we understand. All right, guys, let's get the recorded portion of the show started. So I am going to do that now. And I'm lacking some equipment, by the way. I had to take some things to the range, so I do not have the thing that allows me to plug in my other thing into the thing that talks to my computer that allows you to hear the sound. So no machine gun drum roll today, no music. I apologize. But when I get back into town, both from my trip to Arizona and it looks like I'm going to Idaho for Thanksgiving, we'll get things back up and going. Here we go in 3. Oh, hang on. Quick, just for Diane's sake. What's GN? It's Guardian Nation, Diane, and it's a sponsor of today's podcast, and it's really awesome. Stay tuned. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, episode number 369. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network. I am your host, Riley Bowman, and I have with me Matthew Marister.
Of course. Glad to be here.
No fancy title today.
No.
You've been demoted.
I like that, though.
So actually, I probably would have been doing the episode with Jacob today, but Jacob's occupied. And in fact, our website was down today, which that always frankly sucks when it happens. And it happens from time to time. That's the nature of a business where you have a website that is a very complex website with a lot going on, and hundreds of thousands of people visiting it every month. So it went down last night, and it's taken most of the day to get it back up. So if you tried to go to our website today and it didn't work, we apologize, but it should be working again. And Jacob was working really hard on that, and he has some other things he's got to take care of. So he is MIA from today's episode. So we had to settle for Matthew. Lowly demoted Matthew.
It's okay, man. You guys are used to it.
So what's up? Today's episode, we are talking about myth or fact. Myth or fact, revolvers are more reliable than semi-automatics? Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This will be a fun discussion.
Yep.
Because this is something that is said all the stinking time. People are like, oh, get a revolver. It's more reliable, Or they see an article or a video or something where a semi-auto malfunctions. Well, my revolver doesn't do that. So we're going to talk about that. It's going to be fun. Today's episode is sponsored by Guardian Nation. Check out guardiannation.com to learn more, of course. Now, many of you listening should be familiar, probably are familiar with Guardian Nation, probably tired of hearing about it. But guys, it is like one of the main things that sustains the business here at concealedcarry.com, to be frank. And we think it's pretty awesome. We are shipping right now, actually, as I speak, this week. Packages are going out for this quarter's Guardian Nation members box. And by box, we use that term very loosely. The idea started when we launched Guardian Nation. It was kind of all the rage at the time, these membership boxes that you could subscribe to, and you pay usually something every month, and then every month you get something sent to you. Well, to be honest with you, we just didn't want to put together boxes every month. It sounded like a big pain in the butt. And also, we kind of thought, well, hey, it'd be cool to do something bigger, but just less frequently. And so once every quarter, we send a box. Sometimes it comes in a box, sometimes it comes in a package, like vinyl, or not vinyl, but like plastic, or like a bubble envelope or mailer. Or this month, everything actually fits in kind of like an envelope. So that's kind of weird, right? But actually has inside stuff that'll allow you to obtain over $160 worth of product, I believe. So, yeah, why aren't you a member? Qualifying members receiving their packages this week, maybe into early next week, it takes a few days for us to get all these put together and out the door. So, Guardian Nation, that's just one amazing benefit. There's all kinds of members only training materials online. There is a special members only Facebook group. There's all kinds of cool things available to Guardian Nation members. So you should join if you aren't already a member. GuardianNation.com. Today's episode also sponsored by Mantis X. We love Mantis X. It's a really cool, revolutionary product. And I'll tell you the thing, too, with Mantis X, with the company, they continue to innovate and release new and even cooler stuff. And I've caught wind of some stuff that's coming here in the near future as well. And it's pretty exciting. So I think it's awesome to see a company like this continue to make cool stuff, innovate, adapt, all of that. Make things smaller too. Like the latest, the original Mantis X is still great, but there's also the X3 and the X10, which the capabilities. Yeah, Matthew's got the. Is that the X3 or X10?
X10.
X10.
Yeah, the good one.
Yeah, the X3 and X10 look pretty much the same. The form factor and the size and everything is identical, but what's inside is a little bit more magical in the case of the X10. Anyway, super cool stuff already available for Mantis X, and cool stuff coming too. I highly recommend taking a look at Mantis X, even if it's just the original Mantis X. I learned a lot about my own shooting and particularly my trigger press by using Mantis X. So head over to concealedcarry.com/Mantis X to learn more and check it out.
Yeah, and the Mantis X will probably be discounted maybe in the Black Friday sale. I don't know.
I think that's true.
Normally we do that and be a good time. And you mentioned the gun giveaways and everything like that. If you are a Guardian Nation member, you're automatically entered into the gun giveaway for the Black Friday sale. So very, very cool.
There you go. Yeah, that is cool. And Jacob clarifies for us here, we do have a Black Friday sale. He's commenting, by the way, on YouTube for those that are listening to this after the fact. Jacob mentions that the Black Friday sale starts for us next week. And it starts early for Guardian Nation members, 12 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day for Guardian Nation members, and 12 a.m. Friday, Black Friday, for the general public. And there will be special deals available for everybody. That's a really cool thing. Totally different this year. In the years past, it's been Guardian Nation members only, but we decided to tweak things a little bit this year. So we hope that you'll check out the Black Friday sale. Just be watching our site next week. Again, 12 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day for Guardian Nation members and 12 a.m. on Friday for everybody else. And you've purchased, you're entered into the gun giveaway. Super, super cool. In fact, I think, is it FN that we're working with on the gun? I think so. I think it's FN.
I think so. That'd be cool.
Stay tuned. So, today's episode. Myth or fact? Revolvers are more reliable than semi-autos. Where'd this come from? Well, recently we saw online a couple of individuals I know in the industry, friends of mine even. One posted something about how he was taking a class where revolvers were used, and he commented about how many of those revolvers failed at some point during the class, actually broke. And then this other friend of mine posted presumably because he saw the other person's post, and I know that he's a bit of a revolver lover and believer and carrier, and also very well experienced. And both of these individuals are very experienced. Anyway, he posted his own like kind of input and said, "No, that's like here's the thing, and actually let me give you kind of the rundown." So, in the case of this training course where all these revolvers were being used, is very similar to a lot of training courses. Like actually, tomorrow I travel to go take a class with Mike Seeklander and Rob Latham, and over 3 days there'll be 1,500 rounds fired. Right, that's a lot. It's 500 a day. So you're going to put a gun through its paces shooting that kind of volume, and you're typically not like cleaning it all that often. You're certainly not cleaning it more than once a day. Well, maybe some people are. Maybe they're taking a break during lunch and actually cleaning their gun. I don't know. I don't. In fact, rarely, or even over a 3-day course, do I even clean my gun. I just keep adding lube because we've talked about this before. Lubrication is far more important than cleanliness when it comes to a gun. At least that's been my experience, and I think that's pretty much true. Um, so it's a high volume course, and so this was a training course where revolvers are being used and a lot of rounds being fired in a single day, and revolvers were going down. The other person's response was, well, here's the thing. Revolvers may not be basic. Let me kind of, and I might get something kind of wrong here, but I'm just trying to summarize it in a way that makes sense. Basically, shooting revolvers 300, 400, 500 rounds in a day without like at some point doing some intermediate maintenance, cleaning, lubrication, that sort of thing. Many revolvers are not ideal for that kind of volume of fire, in that kind of short of a window. And so his point was, look, I carry a revolver that I know is going to work in the first 6, 12, 18 shots. Like if I was in even a prolonged gunfight with my revolver, which does not sound like a very fun idea to me, mostly because I suck at reloading revolvers very quickly. I do know there's people out there who can do it very well and darn near as fast. I'm sorry, you can pretty much not ever be as fast as reloading a semi-auto, because even a person that can reload a revolver as fast as most other people can reload semi-autos probably means they can still just reload a semi-auto faster. There's less steps, less things in the way, like there's just no way you reload a revolver faster than a semi-automatic, right? And you typically have more rounds in a single reload than you would with a revolver. So anyway, but even if you were in a prolonged gunfight, like you're not shooting more than probably honestly 2, or 1 reload, like 2 full loads in your revolver, right? So like it's either a 5-shot or probably a 6-shot. Some guys might carry a 7 or even an 8-shot, but they're probably not carrying those really, concealed because the cylinders are pretty big. But so you see the point. So like one is basically saying, hey, to all the people that say revolvers are reliable, we had 3 or 4 out of, or actually it might have been 5. It was a substantial number of revolvers out of 18 that were involved in this class that basically broke, had problems. And the other person is saying, well, that's not what we really use our revolvers for. Like it's good to get in those classes and to shoot and do high volume, but the reality is you're not, it's not something it's probably going to work. It's 99.9999% likely going to work if it's a well-maintained gun in the first, 6 to 12 shots. Right. And so kind of implying that the reason some of these revolvers may have failed in this class is because it's just not a common thing that people run 300, 400, 500 rounds in a day, the revolver. And so, yeah. But here's the thing. Here's what I can tell you. Revolvers are, they are, I think, inherently, because of the way they operate, more reliable than semi-automatics in that they're not cycling ammunition, right? They're cycling a cylinder. All it has to happen is a cylinder needs to turn at the right times and stop at the right places and line up perfectly with the bore, and then a hammer smacks the primer. Okay, so that's all that needs to happen. That's actually all pretty important stuff and has to be pretty precise, but revolvers generally work pretty well in that regard. The problem is that when they do break, they really break. You know what I mean? Like either the hand that's responsible for spinning the cylinder breaks, stops actually being able to spin it, or and a slightly scarier one, the cylinder stop is that little, gizmo that actually stops the cylinder as it's spinning in the exact precise location so that the cylinder is lined up with the barrel. Uh, that can break too, and actually some I've seen that where it like comes up too early and it just like locks up the cylinder before the cylinder gets in place, that sort of thing. And so there's things that can happen when they do happen, they quite often mean it's going to the gunsmith. You are not fixing it on the fly in the middle of this gunfight. It's not happening. So, yeah. Anyway, so Matthew, I've been going for a minute here, but what's your take on all of this? Like, where would you begin in this debate, if you will?
Yeah, I think this is a good follow up from last week where we talked about 380 ammunition. We got some people riled up, but here's the thing: like, I understand both sides of the argument, and I think we're arguing two different things. Like one group is saying, revolvers are reliable in a certain number of rounds in the context of a self-defense shooting where the typical self-defense encounter is 3 rounds, 3 yards, 3 seconds. So they say, yes, a revolver is just as reliable as a semi-auto. But then if we look at it as a larger, umbrella and say, okay, how do we train with these guns, and what is the maintenance, and is it difficult to maintain these guns or keep them, running? Then it becomes an argument that, or a difference of opinion as to how much effort do I need to put into this gun to keep it running. And I think that's where the semi-automatic handgun has it comes into benefit outside of, capacity and those types of things, is just the average semi-auto. You pick up a Glock or, a SIG or a Smith & Wesson, and you run the gun and you just continue to shoot thousands and thousands of rounds through it. You're not as likely to encounter as many malfunctions or problems as you would with the revolver. I mean, so there are benefits of having a revolver. I think I've seen some people go to a revolver that have, maybe reduced hand strength, and so maybe they can cock the hammer back and it helps them, or for them, physically manipulating the handgun is a little bit easier with the revolver. They're not racking a slide and things like that. So there are some, benefits to a revolver. But yeah, I've shot revolvers, and sometimes even like the timing of it gets out of whack, where the reset of the trigger kind of, catches up. It doesn't reset exactly when the cylinder is set, and then you have to let it out and then pull it. It's almost like short stroking. It feels like, when you're short stroking a semi-auto trigger. So there are things that can affect a revolver's operation and cause it to not work smoothly. And so I think my big takeaway from that would be to not just get a revolver and say, well, they don't ever, malfunction, so I'm good to go. I can shoot it. I don't have to clean it. It's good to go. And that's, I think, the dangerous part. I think by saying that they're so reliable, and that it kind of sets the user up to say, well, I don't have to do anything with it. And then they find out that they do have to do something with it to keep it running.
Yep. Yeah, and I agree with that, by the way. And actually, I think when Glocks first came out, uh, there was kind of this, and I'm sure Glock, the company, never said anything like this, but somehow these sort of like rumors get started where you'd hear police officers. I've heard it from police officers even, where, well, just carry a Glock because you never really need to do anything to it. You never really need to maintain it or clean it or anything like that, right? And so people get set up for failure, and that, well, I've got this Glock, like I don't have to do anything to this. It's always going to go bang, 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 and it does to a point, and then eventually it probably will break and shut down on you. And so yeah, that's a very, I think, valid point that you mentioned, Matthew, about many proponents or people that mention revolvers as an option for gun choice for concealed carry or whatever personal defense reasons, that hey, it's really like idiot proof, just
Right.
load it and it should go bang. Well, it will until it doesn't, and it won't, or and it will get to that point where it'll stop functioning if it's not properly maintained. And not, in all honesty, the maintenance I think on a revolver is of a higher like level. Like you really, I think, need to know uh, what you're doing with a revolver more than you even do with a semi-automatic for the most part. And so, and truth be known, like I actually, so a lot of times, I mean, tell me what you think about this, Matthew. Have you ever heard anybody say something like, somebody's in a forum or a group or something, and they're like, "Hey, I'm just getting into shooting. I don't really know much. I'm not very good with guns. Like, what would you recommend? Like, what should I
Right.
get for my first gun? What should I get for my carry gun?" And also to that point, uh, sometimes you'll hear, women asking questions like that, like, "What should I carry?" And this is, by the way, I think it's a shameful response, but I've heard it. Well, just get a revolver. It's, just all you got to do is load it and just pull the trigger. Like, you don't have to rack the slide. Like, it's a common thing actually that a lot of. Uh, I was standing in a gun shop where the gun shop owner told that to a woman as I was standing right there in the store. She's like, "I'm looking for something to put in my purse," and he's like, "Oh, here's what you need, pretty little lady. It's a 38 special revolver, with a pink handle." Like, what do you think about that kind of advice?
Yeah, I think that's the problem right there, is that without any sort of understanding of the revolver and somebody just saying, okay, well, here's a revolver because it's really easy to use, and that's true, and here's a revolver because they're reliable, and that's also true to a certain point, right? Um, just throw it in your purse and you'll be good to go. Where it kind of sets them up to say, like, you don't want this gun because it's so difficult, you won't be able to understand it, there's so much complexity to it, so stay away from the semi-autos, get this. And then they don't go the step further and say, but here with this revolver, you do have to make sure that you're cleaning, you have 5 cylinders or 6 cylinders now, or 6 chambers, not cylinders, chambers now that you have to clean, right? Like, you have to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that these are all not damaged, or there's no pitting and things like that. And you have to make sure that, these screws right here and here, you have to take off your grip and make sure these screws aren't backing out, because after a long time of shooting, these screws might tend to loosen up, right? And if they get to a certain point, fall out, or it can impinge, the cylinder from moving. So these are the things you need to check. Whereas on the semi-automatic, you mostly just take it apart, you field strip it, you clean it, lube it, put it back together. This requires this, and this. I think if the gun owner, the guy at the shop says, this is what you have to do, to keep your revolver running, but it's easy, you can do it, and it's not difficult. You can definitely do it on your own. I think that it gives that person a little bit more understanding of what they're getting involved in. Um, you know, I think also it's similar. Remember, we talked, I know, last week about how when we get the smaller semi-automatics, they're inherently more problems, right? Because the tolerances are so tight and they're trying to do so much with such a little package. And I think sometimes we think, well, police carried revolvers for a long time, but most of these revolvers, police issued revolvers, weren't like the concealed carry, 2-inch or 1.5-inch barrel revolvers. They were, 4-inch revolvers on a medium sized frame. So I think also when we try to shoot defensive loads in these very small revolvers, it can also further, increase those, pins from moving out or screws from backing out and things like that. So I just think there's a level of knowledge you have to know about your firearm. And if you're a semi-auto owner and you pick up a revolver, they're not the same. You don't lube them the same. You don't clean them the same. So you have to understand the difference. And I think the education is not there nowadays as it was when revolvers were the thing. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
probably knew that, but now they don't. And so a lot of
Yep.
people pick up a revolver and they just don't know.
Yep. Yep. Um, Here's the thing. So I'm seeing actually some comments online here from viewers, asking several times, like, in fact, maintenance on a revolver, like, really, they need a ton of maintenance. Like, a couple of you are asking about that. Uh, yeah, actually, that's exactly our point. That there's this common idea out there. I see it so often that people can just, like, there's not a whole lot you need to do to a revolver. Well, how about this? The revolving cylinder itself spins around a shaft that, like, it gets dirty, and it has to be occasionally taken apart to the point where you can clean all of that. Like, it's not something that, well, it depends on the design of the revolver, but like in the case of one of my revolvers, you have to actually remove a screw that allows a detent to pop out. Then you can take that whole assembly apart and pull the cylinder off that shaft, and you can actually clean it and then lubricate it and then put it back all together again. It's not the same thing as my semi-automatic where I just pull a couple of pins or flip a switch and then it comes apart, and then I pull a spring and a barrel out, and then I scrub everything down and put it back together again. Granted, it's kind of like the same level of maintenance, maybe, as like having to occasionally clean out a firing pin striker channel or something like that, sort of. But a lot of people don't know how to do that kind of stuff either. But not not really. I mean, like, shooting a revolver, there's things that will get dirty, and they get dirty a little bit quicker than maybe some other things that you're accustomed to on a semi-automatic. I mean, think about this: you shoot a revolver, and the round it leaves the casing, passes partway through the cylinder chamber. Okay, whatever chamber that particular round's in, it then jumps over this gap. Right, there's a small space between that cylinder and the barrel, and there's gases, right, from the burning powder and everything that also escape that. So basically what happens when you're shooting a revolver is you get little microscopic debris, dirt, grime, unburnt powder, and just soot, basically, everywhere around that kind of front portion of the cylinder on the revolver. And that a lot of that's going to go right into that spindle that cylinder sits on.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that's my point, is that there's certain things that you got to take apart occasionally and clean, that you might not think about, that revolver shooters sometimes, or owners may not really think about, and they may not even shoot the revolvers often enough to ever even get to a point where all of a sudden, boy, that cylinder feels kind of sticky. Like, what's going on here? How come this isn't working as good as it used to? Here's the other thing. You should be familiar with, at least on a basic level, you should be able to check the timing of your revolver. And what is the timing? Well, the timing is, it's a very precise action that's occurring as the hand spins that cylinder, and the cylinder spins, rotates, right? And then that cylinder stop comes up and goes into that little notch on the cylinder and stops it just at that precise point, and everything's got to be, it's got to be in time. That's what the timing of a revolver is all about. And not only that, but you should also be familiar with checking for play in the cylinder, particularly when it's locked. Because if there's a lot of play, then you may be getting, I mean, number one, it'll start to affect accuracy. Like, imagine this. Imagine that the cylinder or the chamber is not quite perfectly aligned with the barrel when it fires. So every time you're shooting, it might be shaving a little piece of the bullet off, and that may actually cause those bullets to keyhole, and you'll see accuracy suffer dramatically. How about this? Maybe you shoot lead bullets through your revolver. We don't really shoot a lot of lead bullets, pure lead, non-jacketed bullets through our semi-autos for a variety of reasons, but a lot of people will shoot lead bullets in their revolvers. Lead bullets leads to lead fouling. How many of you know that you need to clean that fouling, those lead deposits out of the rifling and out of the barrel of your gun? Like, so there is maintenance involved in a revolver, and there's maintenance that goes above and beyond your basic NRA pistol course, where they kind of like, well, here's your basic cleaning and operation of your gun, things that just aren't covered sometimes in some of those courses. So, yep, there's maintenance involved. And if you put that maintenance aside, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, for sure. And I like a couple of the comments. Jenny made a couple comments, and she obviously understands revolvers because she says, cleaning her revolvers takes about the same amount of time as a semi-automatic. And I don't think that that's wrong. I totally agree with that. The difference is she knows how, how to clean the revolver, but your average person probably doesn't. And I know that they come with manuals and everybody, has access to YouTube and all that stuff. But when I think it goes back to that, when you're told that, hey, just get this because you don't have to worry about it, then people don't bother to look at their manual. They don't bother to understand. And some of those malfunctions that occur in revolvers end up, you mentioned this being sort of catastrophic where the gun just you cannot clear the malfunction, right? It's not like a stovepipe. It's not like a double feed or something that in a semi-auto where you can clear those things. It's sometimes, under that extractor star will get kind of fouled up and it seizes the cylinder up and it's just, there's nothing you can do, right? Or maybe your ejector rod loosens up and moves to a position where it's blocking the cylinder. So, there are times where that cylinder, just will not operate, and so you cannot clear it. Yep. And so I think those types of malfunctions concern me more than the argument that, well, a semi-automatic might get a double feed or might get a stovepipe. That's totally true, and obviously it's true that revolvers wouldn't, right? But the types of malfunctions that occur with revolvers, I think, can be more catastrophic or more, totally debilitating to that firearm. So, there's something in that as well to understand. And I mentioned this to you before we started. I think this argument is similar and goes down the same kind of path as like a striker fired semi-auto, versus your 1911, because it's sort of the same types of things crop up with 1911s where you have to keep them clean. You have to maintain them. They're a little bit different than, your tactical Tupperware or whatever you want to call it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so they're very reliable guns but like a revolver, you kind of have to understand what's going on with your 1911 a little bit more in depth than picking up, your shield and going and busting it down and cleaning it and putting it back together.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you on that point. And in fact, kind of to what I was saying earlier, it used to be that I kind of thought of a revolver as a simpler firearm and almost like, at one time I was kind of in that trap of it's more appropriate maybe for some beginners. But actually, I've kind of got to a point, the more I've learned about guns and about revolvers as well, is that actually I think it's kind of the opposite, that a revolver, particularly for a serious, this is something you're carrying for personal defense. Well, then you're serious about the purpose of that gun, and that gun needs to work. So you're a serious shooter. In other words, you may not be I'm not using that serious shooter phrase as to mean like you're necessarily someone that's shooting a lot and a high volume and that sort of thing, but you're carrying a gun for a serious purpose. And well, you need to be intimately familiar with that gun and how it works, how it operates, know that it's going to work. And in the case of a revolver, I think it's not a beginner's gun. I also think a 1911 is not a beginner's gun. I think a simple polymer framed striker fired gun is a beginner's gun. Now, I'm not taking this from the approach of one is over another necessarily in terms of like safety or safety of operation or ease of operation even, but more just from there's things that you don't know what you don't know about some of these guns sometimes, and some of these guns have things that you probably should know about, but they're more specialized knowledge. Like a 1911 can be a great gun, they can be very reliable in the hands of someone that really knows how to take care of them and maintain them and knows what to look for and knows what to check for to make sure that it continues to operate very reliably. And that's essentially what I'm saying with the revolvers, is that it's very similar in that regard, because an experienced revolver owner will begin to recognize the signs of when things are starting to break or requiring some kind of maintenance. And in a semi-automatic, yeah, there's some things that are similar to that regard, but uh, honestly, especially like in the case of a Glock or a 320 or an M&P Smith and Wesson, a semi-auto, polymer framed striker fired gun, keep it lubed, reasonably clean. They pretty much will run. Eventually, all things break down, but usually the things we have to replace in a striker fired gun is maybe an extractor,
Hmm.
and a recoil spring and
Yeah,
an extractor
probably.
spring, like, and it actually, yeah, I mean, like it's not, and those things are not hard to do. Don't require a whole lot of specialized knowledge. You can follow some simple, really simple steps and do it. And it's actually not that hard to learn the signs of what to look for. You start having extraction problems, you probably have a worn out extractor, you know. So, but you might start having problems with the revolver and not even know you're having problems. And that's the thing. Like, there's maybe not even really any warning signs. It's just like one day it's good, the next day it's broken. In the case of semi-automatic, well, once in a while, I get a failure to extract. I get a stovepipe. I get a this or a that. Well, you start to get some warning signs. So that you see the difference there. So, um, Jenny is not liking what we have to say today. That's okay. She says 1911, not a beginner gun. Jenny, you are a special individual. You learned how to clean and break one down when you were 7. Um, but I will stand by what I'm saying in this regard. There's a lot more things that can go wrong in some of those more classically designed firearms. So, um, okay, so one other thing, I had another thought here, and I got distracted by the comments. I'm not going to look at the comments. I'm ignoring you people.
I'll
So,
watch them. You can focus on your thoughts. I'll watch the comments.
actually, recently, our managing editor on concealedcarry.com wrote an article called "The Problem with Revolvers for Concealed Carry." And you might be interested in going and reading that article. And of course, leaving some comments. There's some conversations or comments here below in the article. Um, and actually, one of the things that Josh talks about is just about, kind of the obvious thing a lot of people think about is limited ammunition, right? That's kind of like pretty much everybody knows. I mean, like the gun I have on me right now carries double or even actually more than double your typical concealed carry J-frame sized revolver. I've got a P365 XL, which has got 13 rounds in it right now. So, you know, some will say, well, it's not likely they'll need all those rounds. Maybe, maybe not. But I'll say this much: if I do need more than 5 rounds, I will not have to do a reload. And probably the average shooter where it comes to reloads with a semi-automatic. Okay, keep in mind I'm talking about semi-automatic. And the average reload time for a lot of shooters is probably in the 3-second range. And a reload on a revolver is probably not any faster than that, right? That's a long time. That's a long time in a gunfight. In fact, it took you less than 3 seconds probably to fire those 5 rounds by far, right? So that gives you an idea that in that same amount of time that you are trying to reload your revolver, if it comes to that point, again, likely or not, I don't know. That could be debated. And we've talked about that sort of thing before. And we have certainly shared in our justified segments on the podcast, many times there were instances of more than 5 rounds were likely involved.
Mhm.
So, I like to hope for the best, but definitely plan for the worst. And I don't carry a revolver as a primary gun. I mean, have I carried it? Yeah, sure, here and there. But it's not the thing it's not my go-to, if that makes sense, right? Uh, and this is a big reason why, because imagine you do get to that dreaded, oh shoot, I need to reload this thing. Well, in that time frame it takes you to reload it, your adversary can shoot a lot of bullets your way. So you're doing that reload under pressure, under flying lead coming past your face, or maybe even
Yeah,
hitting
and
you, right? So go
I
ahead.
no, I would just add in as far as like the reloads and everything. And there's a couple comments that come up. Mark's made a good comment. He said about moon clips and speed loaders and things like that have been talking about. And yeah, you can certainly carry those. I've even seen Neomag makes I think it's the RASC, where it is sort of like a speed strip for a revolver, and that is a good thing, because if you have used a revolver and you do carry like a speed reloader or moon clips, you know that carrying those is not as easy as carrying a magazine, right? They're rounded, so you know it's not as easy as putting a magazine in your pants pocket, right? But the Neomag people made one that is pretty legit. So yeah, I agree. There are definitely ways you can carry spare ammunition with a revolver. I think it's not as easy to carry. It's more bulky, I think, with a speed reloader or whatnot. But yeah, those are good comments. And you guys obviously know your guns and revolvers and things like that. I also saw a comment from Bobby that I wanted to talk about, and he says it's like everything else, it all comes down to personal preference and experience. And I think that's partially right. I think that I agree with that, and I would dovetail that into what Jenny was saying, and focus on the experience part. Like, yeah, we could all get a personal preference and say I prefer this gun versus that gun, but where does your experience lie? And if your experience is in semi-autos and you have a revolver, then that revolver is not going to run to peak performance. And if if you have a 1911 and you've never owned one before and you don't know how to maintain it, then you're probably not going to run that 1911 very well. And like, that come through a lot of your classes, I'm sure Riley as well. 1911s sometimes go down because the people just don't maintain it correctly. They're not as in tune with how to keep that gun functioning, where you can put a tactical Tupperware or something in somebody's hand and just have them continue to shoot, even if it gets dirty, and you will have less malfunction. So I think I agree with you, Bobby. It does come down to personal preference, but the experience part is also very important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This is a common thing that's thrown around in our community. By community, the firearms community, that, well, personal preference and experience. Well, okay, sure. Of course we all want to carry and shoot what we prefer and whatever it is that we get the most experience on. But the things we're talking about today they're just facts, as far as this is how things work and this is how things are different. And it's just pointing out, like, there's pros and cons to both sides. And as I see it, there's more cons to carrying a revolver for personal defense than there are pros. When you're comparing it to a semi-automatic. But there are people that prefer a revolver. But here's the thing. I think let's get back to the original premise of this episode, and because I think this is a really important fact. One of the pretty much the reason people will say I carry a revolver instead of a semi-automatic is because of this reliability, reason, right? It's You ask somebody, well, why do you carry that? Because it's more reliable. Because I know it'll go bang. Like you hear all these like common phrases that people use when they're talking about revolvers to describe them. And really, if the point I was trying to get with this episode today is that revolvers, generally speaking, are more reliable. It's apples and oranges, right? They work completely differently from semi-automatic. And the number one big difference is that the semi-automatic is cycling ammunition, and the shortcoming there is that the ammunition can sometimes not cycle, gets hung up somewhere in that process. And in the case of a revolver, it's not the ammunition that's cycling, it's the revolver itself that's cycling. Literally, a cylinder is cycling. And so you have that you're eliminating that variable of the ammunition causing some sort of problem or failing somewhere. And there's also that bonus in the revolver that if you do have, like, say, a bad primer, you just press the trigger again and it rotates and gets that one out of the way and the next one's ready to go. Whereas in a semi-automatic, we do have what's called an immediate after or immediate action drill, an IAD. You got to actually tap rack or, that sort of thing, right? So again, there are pros and cons, but again, most people justify carrying a revolver because it's just simply, and they give you the impression that it's 100% reliable. And the point of today's episode is that it's not a given that they're 100% reliable. They oftentimes are, but do they break? Yes. In fact, I have a revolver right now that is down, and I actually had a screw come loose. And this is something that I think you may have mentioned something about screws. I don't remember, but a lot of times with revolvers, holding it up to the camera now, probably won't focus very good, but little tiny screw there, little tiny guy. And the reason this is down is I was shooting the revolver and I didn't notice the screw worked itself loose and it came out. And miraculously, I found the screw and the little detent that goes along with it, but not the spring.
Mm-hmm.
So that screw came out, and all of a sudden, I have a revolver that doesn't function like it's supposed to. And I couldn't put it back together again because I do not have a spare one of those springs. So I need to get it ordered. So, things do break and things do fail. It doesn't matter the gun you choose. Everything has the potential of failure. They're all mechanical devices. And so what we do is we end up making choices based on what's an acceptable level of risk for us personally, and also maybe based around, well, if this happens, then I do this. And again, for me, it comes down to I generally have a lot of faith in my revolvers, but at the same time, I know if something breaks, it's probably really broken. And there's not anything I could do in that gunfight to get it back again. And so if I'm carrying a revolver as a primary, I might be carrying a second one as a backup, or even like a semi-automatic as a backup, like a LCP or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas in the case of a semi-automatic, primary carry gun, well, could something break catastrophically and make that thing not work at all? Yeah, that could. But the most likely thing to not go right is that it has some kind of feeding or extraction reliability concern. And so we should be shooting our guns to a point where we generally learn that this thing's pretty reliable based on this ammunition that I'm using in it. And, based on a large sample size of I've shot thousands and thousands of rounds and I'm maintaining it and I'm replacing recoil springs when I'm supposed to, and I'm replacing extractors when I'm supposed to. By the way, just as a general rule of thumb, since I mentioned extractors again for the second time, just as a general rule of thumb, I recommend that you replace recoil spring assemblies or guide rod, or not necessarily guide rods, but at the very least, sometimes you have recoil springs and guide rods, right? And so you only have to replace a recoil spring. Sometimes you have that recoil spring assembly and the whole assembly has to be replaced, right? It can vary based on caliber, but generally with most modern firearms, if you replace them at least every 5,000 rounds, you're probably okay. Some small micro compacts like a 365, they actually recommend replacing every 2,500.
Mm-hmm.
But the gun will probably still run, no problem, up to 5,000 rounds. My point is, if you replace recoil springs at least every 5,000 rounds, you're probably okay. And then if you replace extractors and extractor springs every 10 to 15,000 rounds, you're probably okay. Probably. Yeah. Obviously, there's no guarantees. But just as a general rule of thumb, and those are the two things that you should somewhat regularly replace on semi-automatic handguns. And if you do that, it's probably functioning dang near 100% for you all the time. And then the third thing would be, and people overlook this with the semi-automatics, is magazines / magazine springs,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't know if I've ever actually replaced magazine spring. I just replace mags. It's like, well, I can order a spring or I could just order a new mag. I guess it probably depends on the mag actually, because some mags are a lot more expensive than others. I just haven't gotten to a point where I've had to actually completely trash and throw away a magazine for my handguns anyway. I have thrown away AR mags before, but anyway.
Yeah, those are more touchy, I think.
So yeah, I think it comes down to knowing your equipment and understanding it, knowing how to take care of it, but don't lie to yourself. So don't fall for this trap of, well, what you need is a revolver because it works 100% of the time.
I have to give the best comment of the day, I think. Let me find it here. Yes, Ben Giles. C. Mark Riley is the one with a loose screw.
It's true. I'm holding it right here. Did not come out of my brain, but yeah, anyway. So, there's probably other stuff we talk about here, but I hope people get the gist. And that's pretty much all I have for today. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we just have to make sure that whatever platform you're using, whether it's a revolver, a 1911, a single action, cowboy revolver and a drop leg holster, whatever you're carrying, make sure that you understand how to maintain that gun and the things that can go wrong specifically with that type of firearm, how to maintain it, how to keep it running, what the best practice is for that. And you make your decision based on your needs and what works for you. But don't fall into the trap of just saying revolvers never fail, because they do.
Yep, they do. So there you have it. That's today's episode and today's discussion. We do need to do one thing, though, before we let people go. I should have announced this at the beginning just to make sure people stayed around. But we've got to announce a winner of our podcast giveaway.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do. And this week, we are giving away a month free of Laser X. 1 month of Laser X. And I am going to click a button, which will pick at random one lucky winner. So, Matthew, duplicate for us, please, the machine gun drum roll.
Well, I can't. I can do a regular drum roll with one hand. I'll try.
No, you're supposed to go back to your grade school days when you're a little kid and you played, Army or GI Joes or something, and you.
Oh boy. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Ready. It's a malfunction.
Wow, yeah.
It's a malfunctioning Modus.
That's it died. Glenn F is the lucky winner. Glenn F. Last name starts with F, as in Fred. But his last name's not Fred. His first name's Glenn. Glenn F. Congratulations, Glenn. We will email you and contact you and hook you up with your 1 month free of Laser X. Hope that Glenn enjoys and that it is an aid to him in his dry fire practice and becoming a better shooter. Awesome. Very excited for Glenn. Congrats, Glenn, for winning. Now, next week's giveaway, or actually it's current already, but it'll be announced next week as far as the winner. Right now, we have the giveaway going, so make sure you head on over to concealedcarry.com/podcast prize to sign up. And we're giving away a Flight 93 commemorative hat from 511.
Oh, and I had mine on last week.
It's actually, the official name really should be, it's Never Forget hat, and it has, I'm not sure which side it's on. I'm wearing another variation of the hat, and I only have one of these. I think it's on this side. The logo's on there, and it's a logo that represents the Pentagon, the Twin Towers, and Flight 93 that went down in Pennsylvania. So the 3 planes that crashed, well, 4 planes crashed, right, but 3 sites. So we're going to give away one of those Never Forget hats, and we still have some left after we did a giveaway at the USCCA Expo earlier this year. We sent some to our Guardian Nation members, and we have some left. So we're going to give away one of these hats to a lucky winner. So make sure you sign up at concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. So, guys, thanks for watching or listening to this episode today. We appreciate you. Again, I'll be hitting the road actually, I don't remember if I mentioned this in the pre-show or during the show, but I'm hitting the road tomorrow for training with Mike Seeklander and Rob Latham. I'm super excited to go through their bigger circle class. And but I got to drive through like a snowstorm to get there. I'm driving there. It's about a day's drive away from the home base here. So wish me luck.
Yeah, I'm jealous, but at the same time, I know you got a lot to do. So
Yeah, Matthew, you got anything exciting?
I'm not an exciting dude. I got physical therapy. That's my whole goal right now.
Mark says, great episode aside from the revolver hate. No hate here, brother. Just speaking the truth. You know what? I actually stopped by a gun shop recently, and I love looking at revolvers, and I saw one that I'm like, I might like to buy that one. Don't really have the money for it right now, but it tempted me. And if I go back there and it's still there, it will tempt me again. I think it was a Smith & Wesson 29. Maybe it was a 19. It's either 29 or 19. Either way, they're both fine revolvers. So we'll see. Will it tempt me again? All right, guys. Thanks so much. Take care. Be safe. Have a great rest of your week, since you will probably not hear from me again. Not entirely certain what's going to happen with Thursday, which should be tomorrow's episode, but we may be publishing something that's pre-recorded, or perhaps Matthew and Jacob will be back on. We'll let them work it out.
Right.
So with that, a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care. Boom. And we are out. Yeah, David, I'm looking at that. I just made that New Mexico drive not too long ago, and it's just not as interesting a drive. It's almost like, do I want to make things more interesting and drive up over Vale and all of that in the snow? Or do I want to take the less interesting drive? By the way, I'm going to hit snow regardless, because there's, even in Arizona, they're forecasting snow. So it will be interesting. Snow in the higher elevations, obviously. Like Grand Canyon is going to be getting snow. And that's not, people probably think like the Grand Canyon is this, hot place in Arizona, and it is, but it's also at like 7,000 feet. So it's up there, it's capable of getting some kind of cold and snowy weather from time to time. And I'll be going through Flagstaff. And I like Flagstaff. Anybody that's been through Flagstaff, Arizona, it's a cool little town. Kind of a bit of a touristy sort of place, like it kind of has like that. Like there's certain things about it I don't like, but I think it's kind of a cool little town. But anyway, Tony drove through New Mexico once. Boring. I'll say this much. New Mexico is at least it's slightly more interesting to drive through than Wyoming. Cha-ching. I wish Jacob was here listening to that. Maybe he is. Okay. Eastern Wyoming. Western Wyoming is actually pretty cool and cool to drive through. Stopped in Albuquerque. Also boring. There's some good food there, though. There, if you like Mexican and Indian, like Native American cuisine. So, yeah.
What is Native American cuisine?
Well, like Navajo. Like
got it. Okay, got it.
One of the biggest reservations around is like Navajo Nation, and Jacob and I stopped at this place that was like a mix of Mexican and Navajo food.
Interesting.
And he had like anybody that's familiar with a Navajo taco, well, he had like a legit Navajo taco. Like my family makes those from time to time, and we think they're legit. They're not compared to when you actually get a real Navajo taco. So yeah, cool stuff. Well, guys, we'll let you go. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.